Today we're going to be explaining the storyline in the ending cutscene to the Shattered Veil. Now this of course means that we're going to have some major spoilers up ahead, so if you guys haven't completed it and you're trying to avoid spoilers, click off the video now. But with that said, my gosh, this cutscene is insane. It explains so many different things about things we've been wondering about Richtofen, the S.A.M crew, and even DLC 4. So much worth getting into in this video. But what's interesting about this is that this cutscene is kind of split into two. One before the boss fight and one after. And the one before the boss fight I feel like is a bit more interesting story-wise, but hey, whatever. But with that all said, I know you guys are going to love this stuff, and I would very much appreciate if you guys dropped a like and subscribe. And with that said, let's break down this cutscene. Now in this first cutscene, this finally explains where Richtofen's been this whole time. Because keep in mind, the last time we saw Richtofen was in the intro cutscene of Liberty Falls, and he was just puffed away by the S.A.M AI. We had no idea where he was going or where he was sent, if he was alive, dead, dark ether, or what. But finally it's explained that he's in a projection of his bedroom that's in the mansion. Now this is very similar to what we see throughout the Easter egg, where different previous owners of this mansion are trapped in projections of different rooms around the map, and it seems like Richtofen, at least temporarily, met that same fate. But that all changed when the S.A.M AI teleported our crew also into this room, and initially when they see Richtofen, they seem like they're going to do what they set out to do in Terminus, get their revenge on Richtofen. But that's where Rightofen changes everything, and he confronts Weaver for what he did to him. And this is where he starts talking about how Weaver and Maxis were sent on a botched hit attempt on none other than Richtofen himself. This is something that we could even see on him, with a scar on his neck and a couple on his face also. Now keep in mind, he says botch because obviously he's not dead. Because after Weaver thought he killed him, he wanted to get rid of the evidence that he did that. So what he did is burnt his house down. But what Weaver didn't know is that Richtofen's son and wife were still in the house. And this is exactly why we see Richtofen having these nightmares of his family burning to death. Because this is what happened to his family. Now it's not clear if his son is dead, that's a whole other thing we'll talk about in a separate video, but at least it seems like his wife died in this fire. He also does clarify when this happened, which is 10 years ago, so this means that this happened a lot closer to the events of Cold War story than I initially thought. I thought it was actually further back in time, but it's actually pretty close, which is very interesting. But we also do learn the names of his wife and son. Now his son's name's Samuel, we actually kind of knew about that for a while, but his wife's name being Mary, I don't believe we knew about that before. Now what's interesting about this is that not only did Richtofen confront Weaver about what he did to him, but also he said it in front of the rest of the crew, so I'm kind of curious going into the next map if that's going to change the dynamics and relationships between our crew and Weaver. But Richtofen didn't stop there, he also revealed something that we've been wondering for so long, and that's the true goals of Project Janus. Because keep in mind, Project Janus was like a cliffhanger at the end of Cold War story, and we had no idea still till now what it really was. But what we actually learn is not only in this cutscene, but also in the radios, which, by the way, if you guys want to check out the radios, I'm going to reference them a lot of times in this video. I'll have a link to my video playing them all for you guys on screen right now. But what we actually learned in the radios is that he needed investors to back his Project Janus. And what he told them is that it was a way to create limitless power, to power whatever they wanted, and really just told them whatever they wanted to hear. But really behind the scenes, what it really was a way to bring his family back from the dead. And what we learned in the radios is that initially his plan was to clone his family to bring them back that way. This is in fact the reason why he had Dr. Modi. You know Dr. Modi from Terminus, she's the one who ran that whole place? Yeah, that's why he hired her, because of her bio research. But what we learned is that this failed over and over again and got darker and darker each time. And this is when Richtofen gave up on this, and he also just wanted to get Modi out of his hair by this time, so he sent her off to Terminus Islands. And this is where Richtofen changed his gaze from cloning to his father's work, Gabriel Kraft's work, with the Sentinel artifact. But unfortunately for Richtofen, as he says in this cutscene, our characters, the crew, completely threw that all away and just gave it away to the S.A.M AI. Now what she's going to do with it, we'll get to in a bit, but for now, unfortunately for Rightofen, he no longer has what he wanted. Now, another significant thing in this cutscene is the device that Richtofen's holding. It looks like some gold thing with infinity stones or something inside of it. I don't really know. And what it is, we don't entirely know. There's not much explanation on what it really is, but all he tells us is that this was originally Josiah Shem's device. He was actually originally a part of the Order from the Chaos story, and then he started talking to Quarterfex, and then he was going to sacrifice all in. Quarterfex betrayed him, and a bunch of stuff that happened, which is this whole other video on its own. But regardless, it was his thing, and what he tells us about this device is that Josiah Shem used it to accidentally break space-time. So it seems like it's pretty powerful. We just don't know what it really does. All we've really seen it used for is just two things. One was to be able to communicate outside of the room that he was trapped in with us, and this is why we actually hear from him throughout the Easter egg. And then also we also see he uses it to escape the room that they're all trapped in. But it just wasn't the device by itself, because if it was, he would have escaped on his own a long time ago. But instead, it was with the combination with the device and the ray gun Mark II. And I think that's an overlooked fact, because keep in mind, this ray gun Mark II is the original ray gun Mark II. It's not like the jet gun or these other wonder weapons that return, because those ones, when they come back to the Dark Aether story, they were recreated by someone else separate from the ones we saw in the original Aether story. But the ray gun Mark II, this was found in the Dark Aether, most likely meaning that this is the same ray gun Mark II from the old Aether story. And keep in mind, the ray gun Mark II was powered by 115. So assuming that something didn't happen to it in the Dark Aether or something like that, that this thing is still using 115, and for some reason the combination of 115 and this device is able to let him escape this room, which is definitely interesting. But regardless, this does then bring us to the actual ending cutscene, and this is where we learn the true motives of the S.A.M AI, something that I honestly had no theories on before this, because it just was very vague. We had no idea what the S.A.M AI's real motives are. But what it turns out it is that she's planning to use the Sentinel artifact to create herself a real human body. And honestly, I should have expected this. This is a common theme in all the radios, even before this map, is that she felt like she was wrong. There was something wrong with her. She wanted to be the real Samantha Maxis, because keep in mind, she's based off of the real Samantha Maxis. So it would make sense that now, after thinking she's a real human, all of a sudden she's just an AI and can't live life like a normal human. I mean, it was kind of all in our face. But obviously, our crew doesn't like the idea of this. But Richtofen adds another layer to this. He says that if she does this, she'll have godlike power. And honestly, the question is, why exactly? Because there's a lot of reasons why. Because if he's just talking about if she gets the body of Samantha Maxis, she'll have the same power of her. I mean, it would make sense, because keep in mind, the last time we saw Samantha Maxis, she was able to kind of defeat the Forsaken, which is pretty powerful, and we saw her have these powers. We just don't know how powerful, but she's kind of powerful. Or maybe he's talking about the fact that currently the S.A.M AI has the power of the Forsaken itself. Keep in mind, the orb that she's in is the Forsaken orb. That's where Richtofen collected all of the powers of the Forsaken and just stuffed them inside of. Like, she has access to all of that. And if it's not that, then there's also the Sentinel artifact she now has too, which is already super powerful, and we all know about that. Or most likely, what he's probably saying here is the combination of all three of those, because it would make sense that he would say godlike if it's a combination of Samantha Maxis' powers, the Forsaken, and the Sentinel artifact. But either way, this is what Richtofen wants to prevent, and he says we still have one shot at doing that. And he convinces our characters to work alongside with him one last time, heading into DLC 4. And with this, we get a look at DLC 4, something that's been expected to be called Janus Towers. Now, if this looks familiar to you, I mean, it kind of should. Not only are you able to see it outside the map on the Shattered Veil, but also on Liberty Falls. You can actually see these exact same towers out in the distance, which honestly is kind of cool that Liberty Falls, Shattered Veil, and DLC 4 are all going to take place in a kind of the same area instead of just jumping all over the place, which is a little cool. But either way though, that's everything that they tell us about DLC 4. Now, that's not everything that they told us in the entire map. There's definitely more hints, things involving Panos and Blanchard, who are definitely going to make their way back there, and even that mysterious force that was talking to Panos is all going to be there with S.A.M AI, Rightofen, and our crew. A lot of big things are going to be happening in DLC 4, and honestly, this cutscene got me excited for it. And I'll definitely be making a video on those other things, especially Panos and Blanchard. That will be something that is definitely worth talking about in its own video. But for now, that's going to wrap it up for this one. And I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts and opinions on this cutscene and what you think about it. And also, if you want to stay tuned for future content just like this, I very much appreciate if you guys subscribe for all of that, because we got some cool stuff coming up. But regardless though, that's going to wrap it up for me. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.